Hi friends, Lorelei Black here from Blade and Broom, and this week we are going to be talking about why witches are crazy, or rather why they're perceived as crazy, or why witches in general, like throughout history, have not always fit into societal norms, and how this relates to hedge crossing and interacting with the unseen world. So stick around. So there are a couple of big topics that we're going to be sort of covering or addressing in this video. And one of them is how witches almost never really truly fit in to the society in which they operate historically. And this goes all the way back to the ancient world. And then the other thing that we're going to be talking about is how that is very much interconnected with the magic that we do, the kind of magic that we do, specifically walking amongst spirits and seeing into other worlds. So first, let's talk a little bit about liminality and what it means to weave the liminal or to work in liminal spaces. It is even the title of Laura Tempest Zaycroft's book about modern traditional witchcraft. So this idea of working in and weaving liminality is very much a part of the work of the witch. We stand between worlds and we walk between worlds. And this is the magic that we do. It's actually really difficult to talk about these things as a let's cover this and then let's cover that because of how very interconnected all of this is. So the idea of liminality is that in between spaces, or that on the fringe, on the outskirts, between what is there and what is here. So what you typically find in folklore, in mythology, in legend, in all of the lore, and even in the historical records, is this idea of witches and sorcerers, people who interact with the world of spirit, living on the fringes of that society and being people who, live in that cottage in the woods, live in that cave, live in a shanty on the seashore. Oh, that would be so nice. They're often alone, but sometimes they'll have an apprentice. Sometimes they'll have somebody that they're passing that lore and that knowledge, that skill onto. And sometimes we see them gathering with others of like mind, whether that's at the Sabbat. And again, the Sabbat is, the concept of the witch's Sabbat is something that we see in lots of cultures. This idea of witches coming together once or twice a year, not usually 8 times a year, but once or twice a year in order to join in some revelry with each other and with the spirits, the great powers with whom they work. The witch mother, the witch father, so a Hecate-like figure, a Tubal-Cain, a Tubalo kind of figure, or that blacksmith, that goatfoot god, that light bringer kind of figure, that folkloric devil that we've talked about. And it's important to note that those figures, that witch mother and that witch father, are themselves very liminal. They are often spirits of the wild places, spirits of the woods, spirits of caves. That's where we see them in their power. Spirits of the crossroads. So we have this understanding that historically and folklorically, witches are often on the fringe. But then the question becomes, why? Why is that? Is it just because of the symbolism of it? Like, are we all just adhering to some symbolism when we decide that the path of witchcraft is the path for us, and therefore find that we don't always fit so smoothly into greater society? Or is it more that we never really fit that well into greater society, and so when we figure out that we're witches, those pieces start to click? That's a good question to ponder. And before I go a whole lot further, I'll say that some of us can and do sort of fit into traditional, conventional roles within society. In the town of Canewdon, where George Pickingale lived, actually it was said that there would always be 3 of cotton and 3 of silk. Which means that there would always be 3 witches of a lower class or a working class, and 3 that were upper class, maybe even nobility, that had this higher rank within the town. It's more common that you knew who the cunning women were that were of cotton, because they might advertise more, they might hang that shingle a little bit more to be able to earn their bread and butter from their skills, from their witchcraft skills, whereas the ones of silk didn't have to do that necessarily. So they weren't making a living as witches. They weren't cutting their way through the world, wearing their pinnacle on their sleeve, as it were. And we have that even now, I think. I don't think it's a class issue necessarily. That's not really the idea that I'm going for here. But it is one of the ways of being able to frame it, that there are sort of people who are obviously sort of embracing the aesthetic of witchcraft, whatever that is at the time, because that definitely changes a bit. And then there are those who blend a little bit better into societal norms, but that doesn't necessarily mean that on all levels they're blending all that well in some ways. Hi friends, I am just jumping in here really fast because I wanted to say hi and welcome to friends both old and new. Thank you so much for joining us for this particular video and just to the channel in general. I'm so excited about the growth that we're having. Thank you so much for being a part of that. And also, I have a couple of really quick announcements that I want to get out there. One is that the channel now has its very own Patreon page, so check that out. It is patreon.com/bladeandbroom, super easy to find, and super easy to help support us in any way that you are able if you are interested. Another really quick thing is that the Red Thread Academy of Traditional American Folkloric Witchcraft is finally available with its first full course, which is like a whole year of study, and it's a way for you to study with me directly, and I mean pretty directly. So you can just buy the book if you're interested and just do it on your own. I'm cool with that, but you can also, if you would like, purchase the book and then join the Facebook group that I have set up for that and interact with other people who are also taking the course, and that is available in my Etsy shop, which is linked down in the description box below. So lots of options. There are other things that I'm getting up to down in my link tree, including writing for Evoke publication every month. It is a fantastic deal, $3 a month, gives you access to lots and lots of witchy and pagan lifestyle articles and all kinds of goodness. And of course, I'm writing about traditional witchcraft, so it's a good time. And there's more, but I'll stop there now and just say, like, subscribe, do all those things, share. That all helps out the channel and helps me get even better stuff out to you and be able to interact in lots of different ways. So, like, ding the bell, do all those things. And back to the content. Here's one of the things that I've noticed. A whole lot of the folks who identify as witches, especially, I think, folks practicing some type of folk magic practice that has a lot of spirit interaction, a lot of interaction with the unseen world, tend to also, I'm not sure if I want to use the word struggle, but I'm going to use the word struggle with depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, Even some psychotic disorders like schizophrenia and the version of bipolar, and I always forget whether it's bipolar 1 or bipolar 2, that tends to manifest with psychotic features, things like hallucinations and delusions and that type of thing. Some of that is the world not understanding us. Some of it really is. Some of it is us being in multiple spaces at the same time. You know, this idea of being able to see through the veil and having to contend with that while you're also trying to hold down a job and pay your bills and take care of your family and whatever else that it is that you need to do in this world. Symbolically, our deities, our powers, our great powers, tend to have features that represent this for us and remind us that this is not entirely an abnormal way for witches to be and to work. Things like the uneven step of the goat-foot god, what is sometimes referred to as the lame step or the hobbled step, because very often, traditionally, blacksmiths either had a mobility impairment already, but were strong and vibrant and intelligent and perfectly able to be trained in all of the arts of the smith. Or sometimes the lore says that an individual was purposefully injured. They were purposefully given a mobility impairment so that they would sort of be forced or corralled into that line of work and to be reliant on staying there and providing those services, which is definitely twisted. Scientifically, the idea of the goat-footed blacksmith has, or the blacksmith with the uneven step, the hamstrung blacksmith, is rooted in this idea of a version of heavy metal poisoning, that it causes the ligaments and the muscles in the legs to draw up. So in past times, when we wouldn't have taken some of the same precautions that blacksmiths today can take and wouldn't have understood what those interactions might have been like, and would have been working with materials that would have been more dangerous for regular exposure. This idea of the blacksmith with a goat foot or a goat leg or a hamstrung leg, an uneven step, would have been sort of popularized into the culture, into the mythology, into the folklore. And the blacksmith is hugely associated with witchcraft, with sorcery, with devilry, with enlightenment, with alchemy, with magic. And then on the other side of this, we have the Goosefoot Goddess, and we see her in several different European folklore and historical records. So we have Hulda is sometimes described as being goose-footed. And we've already talked a little bit about Hulda and her association with the wild hunt, with riding out to gather the souls of the newly departed or those that are ready to depart, and sort of going through the stormy skies and all of that type of thing, and how Hulda is one of the few female leaders of the wild hunt that we see. Normally we're seeing male leaders like Odin or Gwyn ap Nudd, or other specifically male figures that lead that band through the sky. So we have Hulda as the Goosefoot Goddess, and then we have an actual historical queen who was called La Rempaduk. And La Rempaduk means the duck-foot queen. She was a French queen, and I'll link some information down below to give you some further reading about La Rempaduk, and how she is also associated with the name Mother Goose and with our witch goddess, our witch queen. Another image that I like to use, that I like to reference, is that of the deities that have sort of a dual vision aspect. So we see this, for instance, in the New Orleans Loa of the Gede family. So Gede is often depicted with dark sunglasses with one of the lenses poked out. And then we have other deities that are often depicted with like two different color eyes, heterochromia. And to me, these are very often symbolic of that concept of seeing into the other world while simultaneously seeing into this world. Part of what's very challenging about this is that we have to do a lot of reality testing for ourselves. We have to do a lot of checking in to make sure that we're not living entirely in that other world. And operating entirely on information from the other world, but also functioning as best we can in this world. And to counterbalance that, we have to make sure as witches that we're not entirely operating just in this world. There's being too grounded as a witch. We need to be able to operate in that other world as well. We have to be able to be the tree, to be the world tree. We have to be able to be the stang in the center of the crossroads. We have to be able to move in every direction. And that's hard. That can be very hard. And it can be difficult, especially if you don't have other people to be able to run your ideas by, to go, hey, I had this experience and I think it sounds kind of nuts. Is it nuts? Is it just me? You know, and if you're working with any kind of good support network, sometimes you'll run something by a person or by that group and they'll go, yeah, I never heard of that. Don't know what you're talking about. I definitely didn't have that same experience. I don't know. Maybe that's just an individual thing, or maybe you want to poke it a little bit more. And at the same time, you'll get, on other occasions, you'll get that really great feedback and confirmation of, yes, I have definitely had an experience like that. Or, oh my gosh, I thought it was just me. So glad to know that there's other people experiencing this. But it can feel very fragile to talk about these things because so much of what we experience is so idiosyncratic and individualized and runs the risk of us being called crazy people by everyone, you know, by the entire world around us. So there's that challenge of taking the time to really and truly ground and balance our mental health, but at the same time be able to work within a spiritual construct that allows for that flight and that hedge crossing and that straddling of two worlds, or really more than two worlds. There are lots of worlds. But being able to navigate those spaces and to see into those spaces. And it's not so unusual or unforeseen then that we're going to be, as Robin Artison puts it, strange-souled individuals. I love that phrase. That we are going to feel different than our peers, than our contemporaries that don't walk a similar path. And sometimes even a little different than those that do walk a similar path, because as we've discussed before, we're all walking the crooked path, but we're walking our own crooked path. It doesn't look exactly the same to everybody. All right, my friends, that's what I've got for you this week. I do have some links and things down below in the description box, so do take a look if you're interested in diving a little bit deeper into some of these concepts. And I look forward to hearing from you. And I will see you again next Monday at noon. Bye, friends.